Athletics, Mrs. Sankey.
Thank you, Mr. Panzelli. Request approval of the supplementary resignation of middle school winter game manager effective immediately. Any questions or objections? I would like that on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
All I have, Mr. Renfro.
Nothing, ma'am, thank you.
Mr. Evans.
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sankey. And moving to buildings and grounds, Mr. Detweiler.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello. Request approval of the following event and building usage request. And with no questions or objections, I'd like to spread items 1 to 6 on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the planned service agreement with Johnson Controls Fire Protection at the senior high building, which covers the fire pump system, wet sprinkler system, and the main fire alarm panel at a cost of $10,050.18. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have it placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the 5-year contract from November 27, 2024 through November 30, 2029 with NRG Curtailment Solutions Incorporated Power Play for the Emergency Demand Response Program with an annual estimated revenue to the district in the amount of $43,498.54 per year. With no questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, it will be placed on the agenda.
Let's see. Mr. Kokenar, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Ms. Sankey?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Kirsch?
Nothing, thank
Mr. Bingham? All right, that's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. Moving to Carnegie Free Library, Mrs. Driscoll.
Due to a family emergency, I was unable to attend that meeting, so I have nothing to add. Mr. Bontrae?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Hirschman?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to Collinsville Area Career and Technical Center, Mr. Coconut.
We have nothing at this time, Mr. Panzello. Mr. Detweiler?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Langston?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello.
Thank you, Mr. Coconut. Moving to curriculum, Mr. Detweiler.
Request approval of the following professional employee travel in accordance with the district travel policy. Anastasia Hall will be attending the Cambria County Band Festival at Bishop McCord High School, Johnstown, to lead and direct the honors band on Thursday, December 5th, 2024, and Friday, December 6th, 2024. And Melissa Lipinski and Mike Doppelhauer will be attending the PSSA online test taking training at IU1 on November 14th, 2024. No questions or objections, I'd like to have that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Renzi, anything?
No, sir.
Dr. Coons?
I have nothing, thank you.
That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. Moving to cyber, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello. We have nothing for the agenda on Wednesday. Mrs. Driscoll, you got anything to add?
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank
Mr. Ghost?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martre. Moving to federal programs, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. I have nothing, Mr. Renzi.
No, sir, nothing.
Dr. Coons.
I have nothing, thank
We
you.
have nothing, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to finance, Mr. Renzi.
Thank you, Mr. Panzello. We have donations, the anonymous, to the JROTC, anonymous donation of 35 tickets to a Pittsburgh hockey game on January 14, 2025. To the baseball team, we have a donation and installation of a baseball scoreboard sponsored by Jessica Bortz of Laurel Ridge Realty, Caldwell Banker, with an estimated value of $1,000, and donation and installation of a bullpen mound by the Baseball Booster Group with an estimated value of $1,000. To the Bible Club, we had an anonymous donation of $100. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the attached requisitions, orders, and to authorize the district business office to process orders and payments. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to transfer X amount of dollars of the general fund to the capital reserve account for future capital projects. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that will be placed on the agenda.
And we had a finance meeting on Friday, November 15th, 2024. Mr. Detweiler?
Nothing, sir, thank you.
Mr. Kokenar, anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Robinson?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have Mr. Panzella.
Thank you, Mr. Renzi. Moving to food service, Mrs. Sangston.
Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the cafeteria substitute list for 24-25 school year. Any questions or objections? I'd like that.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have. Mr. Marquardt?
Nothing.
Mr. Pepper?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Trickman?
Just like to have the program did receive an impact grant for the breakfast program over at Fulton Township, and it was a $1,500 grant to work on purchase some parts there to help out with that.
Great.
Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Panzella.
Thank you, Mrs. Sangston. He is the man.
He is, isn't he?
Moving to personnel and review and liaison, Mr. Renzi.
Request a conditional approval contingent upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the support personnel list for the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request a conditional approval condition upon successful submission of screening and background checks of the following additions to the professional substitute list for the 2024-2025 school year, for a nurse, biology, a prospective educator, pre-K to 12, and with also special ed, pre-K to 12, an emergency, and another prospective educator. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
The following Family and Medical Leave Act leaves are confirmed by the board. We have a teacher effective November 13, 2024, intermittently for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year. For a custodian effective on or about November 22nd, 2024, intermittently for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year. And for a teacher effective November 1st, 2024, intermittently for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, they'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to hire the following personal student aide effective November 21st, 2024. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, to be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the resignation of support personnel effective November 15, 2024. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, to be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the resignation of a security effective November 4, 2024. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
Request approval of the following long-term substitute teachers for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, will be placed on the agenda.
The following sabbatical leaves are confirmed by the board for the second semester, 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval for support personnel to take a leave of absence effective November 1st, 2024 for the remainder of the 2024-2025 school year. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the retirement of a custodian effective January 3rd, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to accept the retirement of a custodian effective January 3rd, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And request approval to accept the retirement of the cafeteria effective January 3rd, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to waive the return to work after sabbatical requirements and accept the retirement of a teacher effective June 2nd, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to waive the return to work after sabbatical requirement and accept the retirement of teacher effective effective June 2nd, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to waive the return to work after sabbatical requirement and accept the retirement of the teacher effective January 15th, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
And request approval of release time to attend the IPD council meetings with cost to be reimbursed by PSCA as follows. Full day, December 13th, 2024, and half day, March 28th, 2025, half day, April 25th, 2025, and full day, May 16th, 2025. No questions or objections, like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Delwell, anything?
Nothing, sir.
Okay. Mrs. Kokenauer?
Nothing else, thanks.
Mr. Evans?
Nothing, thank you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rennie. Did a fine job.
You want some water?
Policy and legislative, Mr. Martre.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. We have nothing for the agenda on Wednesday. Mrs. Driscoll, anything additional?
No, I have nothing, thank
Mr.
you.
Horstman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Evans?
Nothing, thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Martre. Moving to safety and security, Mrs. Driscoll.
We have nothing there. Mrs. Sangston, do you have anything?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Parlak?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to special education, Mr. Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. I have nothing, Mrs. Driscoll.
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Martre.
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. D'Amico.
I have nothing, thanks.
That's all we have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harshman. Moving to student services, Mrs. Driscoll.
Thank you. 20A, the 2024-2025 musical production staff request approval of the following 2024-2025 CAHS musical production staff for 4 performances, not to exceed the budget of $50,000, conditioned upon obtaining necessary performance licensing, and to authorize such persons to serve in uncompensated volunteer capacity, A, until such necessary performance licensing is obtained, B, upon the ability to hold, proceed, and conduct extracurricular activities under state orders, and such agreement and appointments to be subject to earlier termination based on subsequent state orders. Stipends shall be prorated based on work performed. The position, name, and salary. Production coordinator,
You just want to, I'm not going to speak, you can express it. She could probably do that for them.
okay, so we'll just incorporate all this. Oh, goodness, thank you, I didn't look at that page.
And your next one too comes up, maybe we will do the same.
Okay, sounds good.
Hearing none, that'll be added.
Thank you.
I mean, unless you really want to read it.
No. Student teacher assignments, request approval of the student teacher assignments with Penn West for the spring semester of 2025 with no questions or comments. We'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Okay, and then travel, in accordance with policy 121. And I'd like to incorporate all of those, 1 through 9, and having no questions or comments, we'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda. No, fantastic.
Okay. And I don't have anything else. Mrs. Sangston?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Kokenauer? Mr. D'Amico?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Driscoll. Moving to technology, Mr. Detwiler.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Request approval to solicit bids for E-rate Category 1 District Internet Access and to advertise with no questions or objections, and lay that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Request approval to solicit bids for E-rate Category 2 Managed Internal Broadband and to advertise with no questions or objections, I'd like to place that on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
Mr. Martre, anything else? Mr. Harshman?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Ghost?
I just want to give an explanation for those that aren't familiar with E-rate. It is a federal program, and we will, because of our free and reduced lunch rate, we will be reimbursed for 85% of all of those costs. So it's a wonderful program to participate in. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ghost. That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Detwiler. Moving to transportation, Mr. Coconut.
Thank you, Mr. Panzella. Request approval of the following bus van driver updates and additions. No questions or objections, I'd like that placed on the agenda.
Hearing none, that'll be placed on the agenda.
That's all I have, Mr. Panzella. Mr. Ramsey?
Nothing, Mr. President.
Mr. Perry?
Nothing, thank you.
That's all we have, Mr. Panzella. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coconut. Just under the President's report for the December organization board meeting. The board organization meeting will be held on December 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m., followed by a voting meeting at 8 p.m., and for the board secretary to advertise as such. We have no agenda items. Assistant Superintendent,
I have nothing, thank you.
Mr. Evans,
Nothing, thank you.
that's all we have. Motion adjourned.